Just talking off the break, this is your first time ever at CJAD.
Absolutely, yeah.
Welcome.
Well,
and I found out during the break you're a vegetarian because I offered you a steak, and then you told me your wife's a vegetarian. Your kids have never, ever tasted meat.
Never, yeah. No chicken, no beef, no pork.
Nothing.
They had fish and seafood. So I guess that they're middle of the road, but probably closer to from vegetarian to the.
And you've been a vegetarian for 14 years?
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Okay. It's amazing what you learn about people. All right, we don't have a whole lot of time. I appreciate you making yourself available to us. Let's get right into
Pleasure.
it. Pauline Marois' vision of a sovereign Quebec included what she said were open borders, Quebec's own currency, Quebec's own passport. What's your vision?
Well, it's I guess that it's worth more than 2 minutes to answer those questions. What I can say is that if I'm elected as the leader of the Parti Québécois, obviously we're going to have 3 years and a half to discuss what sovereignty is all about. This is what I intend to do, and we're certainly going to have the chance to talk about all those issues.
But what she said about open borders, currency, do you agree with that? Do you concur?
Well, again, those are...
That's a pretty broad question, though.
Absolutely.
Either you do or you don't.
And I think I would say that I can't answer in 30 seconds those important issues, and in due time, obviously we're going to have the chance to talk about this.
You've said, and we played a little clip earlier on suggesting that, and I think everyone understands this now, but your bid to become leader of the PQ, this is all about separation. You want your own country. When you say you want for Quebec, you want your own country. But you're also quoted as saying we need to turn the page and consider explaining what sovereignty is all about.
Absolutely.
So in your mind, what is sovereignty all about? And hasn't it been rejected enough times to prove to you that it's not something most Quebecers want?
Well, I'd like to take this example of Scotland and what's happening also in Catalonia right now. I think that Alex Salmond, when he was elected, took the time to make sure that he will be able to explain to the population what Scottish independence will be all about. And this is the same way that I would like to use to take the time to be able to explain what this is all about. Unfortunately, for the last few years, we didn't have the chance to talk about this. After the 95 referendum, which, as you know, had a very close result, we just decided let's get this question out of what the political landscape was all about. And we're obviously many years later, and doesn't mean for me that sovereignty is obsolete. To the opposite, about what we're seeing elsewhere, and again in Scotland and Catalonia, to me it shows that it's a very actual and real issue.
But are you fighting a losing battle? Because all the polls suggest that people who want separation, that number keeps going down and down, lower and lower all the time. And I know you said in your original speech in St. Jerome, you talked about re-engaging the youth of this province. They don't seem to really be on board with that either. So aren't you fighting a losing battle?
Well, I think that, again, we didn't have the chance to talk about this. And then, therefore, when you're talking about a question or an issue, obviously, you're not going to be able to have an audience. We need to take the time to explain all the wherewithals of what the independence is all about, and this is what I intend to do.
Someone asked a question earlier on when I mentioned you were going to be here. We're speaking with Pierre Karl Peladeau, by the way, and asked me, what is it that you feel you can get as a separate country, Quebec is a separate country, that you can't get being part of Canada now?
Well, I believe that Quebec will be richer for all the citizens, because we're going to have the jurisdiction that is now owned, by the federal government. I don't want to go back in 1867, but this is, what the Constitution is all about. And we do not have all the powers of a country to make sure that we will be able to move in this direction. And therefore, when we will be able to have this, we're going to be in a position to enrich all the population of Quebec.
Can you tell me what powers specifically you're talking about?
Well, all what powers of a countries are. Energy will be certainly a significant matter. Taxation will be another one. I think that somewhere, and we're seeing this kind of situation taking place. For instance, in Europe right now, they want to get rid and fight what the fiscal protection is all about, and therefore, given that we're going to have the power to do it, we will be able to generate revenues according to those issues, which we're not in a position to do so right now.
People I talk to, we hear from them all the time, say they're concerned that another round of sovereignty talks and the uncertainty that always seems to come with it will only serve to do two things. Number one, further put off investment in this province, and secondly, force people to leave this province yet again, the same way every time this has come up has happened over the past 40 years. What's your answer to that?
No, I don't think so. If we are taking the time to explain, to debate, to share with the population, given again, what I've been saying regarding other countries, I don't think that there are many Scottish that left, Scotland because
they haven't had a referendum 5 or 4 times in the last 15 years or 20 years. This was their one shot. We've done this now 3 times.
Well, 1980, 1995 is quite different than 2014.
Why is it different?
Because, life's change and we're living in a more global economy that we've been when we were in 95. And we need to have all those powers to make sure that we will be able to develop ourselves according to what a country should develop its economy regarding its own things, which are different than the rest of the country got.
I want to ask you something. You just mentioned the global economy and how things are different now. You speak pretty much perfect English, yet you recently referred to English as a foreign language, which was a comment I think that offended a lot of Anglophones who live here. Because, of course, Anglophones have a pretty significant place in Quebec's history.
I don't think so. I never say that English is a foreign language.
You're quoted as saying that in an interview 2 weeks ago.
Well, you know what?
Regardless, let me ask you this.
I've been quoted so many times, so differently. But I can tell you right away, it's not a foreign language to me. It's a language, and it's an important language because, everybody speaks English around the world.
Is it important that people in Quebec speak English?
Absolutely. Yeah, and if they can talk, and speak other languages like Spanish, like German, like other languages, I think that, they will enrich their own personality given that they will be able to move forward in different countries.
Is that something you would encourage if you were the leader of the PQ?
Absolutely. I think it's important, and this is what education is all about. I think that, we should spend more money in education because it's the way that we've been able, to move forward for the last decades, and I still consider that's the way that we're going to be able to make the difference in the world right now.
I was going to ask you what role you think or what role you believe Anglophones would have in your Quebec if you become leader and provincial leader of the province.
Well, we're all integral citizen of the province of Quebec, of the country of Quebec, and therefore, we need to respect what our history is all about, and we've been always welcoming everyone, and we will continue to do so. To me, there's no difference between an English-speaking and a French-speaking citizen.
I want to ask you something else. Many people have mentioned as well that they think Montreal, and we know that Montreal has slid as the economic engine of Quebec. Things are not going great in Montreal, but maybe we could reverse that if Montreal became a special bilingual zone. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think that as much as language that you're able to speak, as much as, you're going to be in a better position to perform worldwide.
Would you be in favor of Montreal becoming a bilingual city?
Well, it's not bilingual. Montreal is, obviously, majorly populated with French like the rest of the province, and that doesn't mean that we don't think, we should not protect and continue to protect French language. This is also, a significant root of our history, and then therefore we need to make sure that we will be in a position to protect it.
Yeah, I've heard this idea of protecting the French language over and over again. Do you believe that Anglophones are not interested in protecting the French language as well?
Well, it's a different landscape. We're surrounded by English speaking, and then therefore, and I would say it's even truer today, given the magnitude of the American culture. Not only, in fact, in Quebec, but everywhere, even in Europe. Also, they have concern about this. Even Americans have concern right now about the significant amount of people that speak Spanish, and they also have an issue to make sure that at the end of the day they will be also able to protect the English. As it looks like if we were to say this 50 years ago, people would think you're completely crazy, but right now it's a real and serious concern that they also have.
I want to turn now to the economy.
Yep.
You said that you actually don't believe Quebec's economy is in that bad shape. In fact, you accused Philippe Couillard of trying to scare Quebecers into believing it is. How did you arrive at that conclusion?
Well, and it's been said by many people, from professors to commentators to even reporters. The premier said when he came in power that the deficit will reach $5 billion. So it was completely untrue. And then therefore, as you probably know recently, you've been seeing economics coming and reporters that said, and in fact, last week, when the finance minister Lettao came in with his mise à jour économique. Well, the deficit is at 2.8 billion, which include also, the deposit that we're making in the Fonds de Génération, which is not, spending, which is, in fact, putting money to make sure that we will be able to face the debt. So I guess the cat is getting out, or the rabbit is getting out of the hat, because we've been seeing that the numbers that he's been using, which is basically legitimate, what he's doing, which is reducing expenses in complete improvisation. It's unfortunately not working.
What would you be doing if you were premier right now, as far as that's concerned?
Well, I'm not premier, so but I certainly gonna work on revenues. I think it's important, and unfortunately, what we've been seeing, it's only one side of the equation being spending.
Mm-hmm.
What about revenues? What about creating jobs? What about stimulating the economy by having new companies? What about continue to build a strong economic base with Quebec-based companies that will be able to pay good wages, that will be able to generate revenues, income tax, to make sure that we'll be able to finance what Quebec is all about, which is solidarity, which is education system, which is health system, and all those things that the state has been providing to the population for the last decades.
But when you talk about revenue, you're right. You're talking about one side of the ledger.
Not
versus
only
the other.
increasing taxes as Philippe Couillard is doing.
It's about getting businesses to come here to locate here. But doesn't that go back to the question of, here we go talking about sovereignty again? That's uncertainty. Business hates uncertainty.
I don't think it's uncertainty. I think that I've been improving for the last I've been in business and running Québécois, which is a quite successful company, for the last 14 years. I decided that I would like to go in politics to be able to give back what I receive. And I guess that my track record is about creating wealth, not certainly making sure that people will get poor down the road.
You've earned a reputation as what we call a union buster in this province. You've locked out employees more than a dozen times. Now you want to lead a party, which is interesting, based on a social democratic proposition, while the unions are pledging, and I think this is only a couple of weeks old, to pull their traditional support of the PQ, because unions have always been in the PQ corner. But with you as the leader, they're saying, well, we're not sure we want to get behind Pierre Karl Peladeau. How are you going to deal with that anomaly?
Well, we can go back and talk about specifically, what you mentioned earlier. The three labor conflicts that took place. One was about Videotron. I think that customers were really unhappy about what the service and product that they were delivering to them. And I guess that today it's completely different. It was requiring, because given the end of the monopoly that was taking place forever in the cable business, a change of culture of the company. And today, instead of having a subscriber, we have a customer. Well, we used to have, because as you know, I'm not in the business anymore. But certainly this is the culture that we changed in the company. And instead of, getting companies going down, we create jobs. We went in the wireless business.
Sure, no, I understand what you've done from a business. You've been very successful.
The other side of the equation is the newspaper. I guess that, that everywhere in the world, from Montreal to elsewhere, from the New York Times to, the Times in London, the newspaper business had been facing significant changes, which came with the internet integration and technology, bringing new ways to be able to inform yourself or to be able to entertain yourself. So will you continue to work the same way that you've been working when it was a growing company and it's now in a declining mode? Certainly not.
Do you need union support going forward? Do you need these people to be in your corner?
Well, I need the support of all Quebecers. I think this is what is important, and I would like to make sure that my speech, the language I will use, will be the one that will be able to provide what I really believe is that sovereignty will get Quebecers richer down the road.
We're running out of time. I want to ask you this question. Up until now, and I think Jean-François Lisée said this, he said, I would like bold Anglos to consider voting for me as leader of the PQ. Do you expect many Anglophones would vote for Pierre Karl Peladeau if you were leader of the PQ?
Well, you know what? I'll do my best. I'll come and I'll share with them, and I'll have a completely open-minded perspective on this.
You going to offer anything to the Anglophones, or just try to sell the idea of separation?
Well, to me, as I said, Anglophones are part of Quebec, and what I'm looking to achieve is to get Quebec richer down the road. So, Anglophones are part of the equation completely.
Charter of Values, a huge part of the last provincial election, which didn't end up perhaps being the determining factor as to why the PQ lost, but you said you'd move to make it more inclusive. What does that mean?
Well, what I'm saying on this, first of all, I was not I was not MNA at that time. What I know is that, they went in a parliamentary process that was far from going to the end. So it's easy to conclude that after this process that, we will be able to have an agreement and make sure that, we will continue, because this was the basic of the charter, which was, making sure that, we will be able to defend and to protect, equality between women and men. That was the main purpose of the charter.
Would you allow your inclusive version of the charter, were you to become the leader of the province, would you allow people to wear turbans and kippas and whatever in public institutions?
Well, this debate needs to take place. It doesn't belong to me. I think it's a debate that population will have to have, and therefore, what I was referring to earlier regarding the parliamentary process, that will give the occasion to all the population to express themselves about this.
One last question. We've heard about the ethical breaches that you had. You're a new MNA, and perhaps it was expected you wouldn't necessarily know all the things you could and couldn't do. Now there's a shareholder investigation, if you will, into TVA Group over the fact that when you acquired Vision Global, you acted politically as opposed to in the best interests of your shareholders. It's a public company. They're saying you have political ambitions ahead of your business interests. How do you answer that?
Well, I will not make any comment on this. Those comments belong to the company, and obviously I'm not part of any of those actions right now.
You're not part of the company anymore, Quebecor?
No, absolutely not.
You don't go to meetings?
No, I don't. I'm not part of Quebecor at all. I said that many times, and I had also the occasion last week to answer to what Don McPherson was saying, because he intend to say that I was part of the management. I'm not. I completely resign all my position and declare that the day I declare my candidature.
If you're the leader of the PQ, will you divest all your business interests?
Not at all. I said, that I will put my shares in trust.
In a blind trust?
Blind trust, yeah, absolutely. And I said it despite the fact that I'm not obliged to, according to the law. But if I'm elected the PQ leader, I will do so.
Mr. Peladeau, I thank you so much for coming in and sharing your time with us.
It's a pleasure.
Welcome to CJAD, by the way.
Yeah.
Best of luck.